they don't have enough, I don't know, the rules and the way it works. Word just is not built for book layouts, kerning of text. And I know there's a lot of stuff that as a designer, formatter, I will probably use terms that you don't recognize. And if you don't, just kind of raise your hand and ask me at the end. And I'll try to explain them. But there are really 4 types of, hold on, there's something here in front of my face. Okay, there are really 4 types of design book formatting, and those are print, PDF, Kindle, and EPUB. Each one is completely different from the next one. So you want to make sure that you know how you want to end up with your book format, as well as what programs to use to make them happen. The print can be sent out. It's a lot more costly than any other type. The PDF can be downloaded by anybody. Anybody can open a PDF. Everybody has all the software to do that. The only recommendation with your PDF is that you make it an 8.5 by 11 sheet if you're in the US, because people don't like to waste a lot of paper. So when you format it in an odd size, a 6 by 9 or 5 by 7 or whatever that is not an 8.5 by 11, they'll be printing out a whole sheet with just a little section in it, and that will waste a lot of paper. So always with PDFs, take out blank pages and make sure they're 8.5 by 11 if you're in the US, a size if you're in Europe. Kindle also has a special layout program. They do have a way to do it on, do a Word file and then upload it. But like with any WYSIWYG, you get what you pay for. So if you don't take the time to properly format your Kindle, you're going to end up having to deal with all the little nuances that they don't catch. Then for the EPUB actually has a validation service. So you can go in there and make sure that it validates so that it'll then look right on all the other types of EPUB devices, because there isn't just one like there is with Kindle. There's multiple types of EPUBs. Now, then you have to decide what kind of design you want to use. Do you want to use a classic design, a modern design, Western? Is it a romance? Is it children's? Each one will require different specs. So make sure, though, whatever you do, that you don't make your design stand out. Yes, your design needs to look good, but you don't want the reader's eye to be distracted by the design and not get the content of the book. So the next thing I want to talk about is the types of paragraph styles you'll be using. In your chapter, in your program, whichever program you use, you should set up styles. Don't just type it out and then individually apply styles. Be sure to set up a style. Even Word has styles. They have paragraph styles, they have character styles, and they have overrides. And you should be sure to set those up first so that you can just reuse them. And that'll help keep some uniformity and some conformity to the whole book, so it looked like one cohesive unit. And talking about cohesive units, I'm sure that Elizabeth would agree with me that if you are going to have your interior design look proper, it should use the same fonts and the same look that the cover uses. And Elizabeth and I have gone back and forth, and I've said, what fonts are you using on the cover? And then I've changed whatever font it was by simply going into that style guide and choosing whatever she told me to use. And that's when that's what I'm suggesting that you do too. Make sure that there's uniformity, not just in the inside, but conformity to the outside as well. There are now there's a specific order that you should put your books in. And that order is, you'll have your front matter, you'll have your book, its content, and then you'll have your back matter. It must be in the right order. That is super important. The order that it should be is you start with your half title page, if you're going to use one, then you do your series title page, which would be page 2, the full title page, the copyright page, which should contain numerous pieces, and not just your word that says copyright, but any copyright notices, the ISBN, all that should be there. And I do have that all written out in different, in a Word file that I can share with you if you want me to just send me a quick email. Are we going to share the email addresses at the end, or should I do that now? Okay, so we'll do that later. Then subsequent chapters go after that, and then you can go with quote mark. We call it an epilogue. You can use one of those at the very beginning if you'd like, but at the very end of your book in the back matter, that's where, if you haven't done the acknowledgments in the front matter, put it in the back. Of course, all your appendix and notes and glossary and all that list of contributors all can go in the back, but also don't forget to put your call to action in there. A lot of people will forget to do that call to action. One thing that Kindle is doing now is they're adding their own call to action to get you to purchase the next book. But I would recommend highly that you always include a call to action at the end. Now, the thing that I see most often done improperly is when you're doing a novel should be left, not left justified, not fully justified, but left. So make sure that you have that flowing right side. If you don't, what happens is you end up with all kinds of problems. You end up with what we call rivers, which are
Oops. It looks like we've lost Ginger for a moment. Or have you all lost me? Everybody can hear me still? Okay.
We can hear you.
So Ginger seems to be a little stuck, running into some technical difficulties. Good information. I will try see if I can convince her to put all of that together in a PDF when she was giving, especially the list of the order for everything to be in. I think that's really good information to have. And for FAPA members, we'll go ahead and make that available as a download in your myfapa.org account, so that you'll be able to just download that automatically. And you'll also, we can make it available on our FAPA member forum, so you guys can have that information. I think she was about at the point where she was going to start wrapping things up. And so I'm sure she will join us, and then you guys can ask her questions. And if she's got anything else that she really wanted to add, we can add that at the end, because now, and apparently everybody here already knows Elizabeth, How many people have books that Elizabeth did the covers for? Yeah. Everybody's like, no, it was me. So I just met Elizabeth yesterday, and she was actually sitting pretty much in that same chair with that same gorgeous painting that she's working on behind her. She is Elizabeth Babsky. She is a graphic designer, artist, and writer with a BA in creative writing and business from Florida State. And she began working for small businesses and associations. Early, she has her own creative studio, and I'm sure she can answer questions about that. She has a long history of working with authors on book covers, as we just proved by the number of people who have worked with her. Her books have won to date 2 gold medals for cover design, which is always amazing. By the way, if she is your cover designer and you win an award, you can request an extra award, an extra medal purchased for her as your cover designer, since she's why you won. Anyways, Elizabeth is going to talk to us tonight about why cover design is so important besides winning awards. Elizabeth, tell us about cover designs.
Well, hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be a new FAPA member, and I'm very honored to be here talking about cover design. So I am going to try to share my screen and to go to my fancy PowerPoint. So hopefully this will work here. We're going to give it a shot. So, oh, disabled, can't do it. It says host disabled screen share.
Oops.
Do we think, is that fixable, or should I just go to plan B here?
It's
fixable.
It should be fixable.
I don't know why it reverted. I'm sorry. Try it now.
Okay.
Try now.
Try it now. Okay.
Technology is such a
Ooh.
wonderful, fabulous thing.
I think it's working. All right.
It is indeed working.
And can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Except I can't click on my slideshow. There we go. All right. Okay. So do you guys see the actual full thing, or do you see the
Yep.
sidebar? Okay.
Full
All right.
thing. You are good to go,
I'm
Elizabeth.
all right. So how do you design a cover that grabs attention? And you have to excuse the koi. I'm obsessed with them. It's my logo, so they're everywhere. They're on my website. I love koi. So do you judge a book by its cover? Of course you do. And in a world where there's so many books competing for attention, it's good to have one on the shelf that makes a reader stop and pick it up. So that is what we aim to do here with getting your cover in tip-top shape. The first thing you want to know, and these are tips for how to approach cover design, is to know your genre, embrace your genre, because the reader is going to be looking for their type of book. They want a certain kind of story. They want it to look like a certain kind of story. So you'll notice I've got 2 examples here, extremely different genres. I've got middle grade fantasy and adult romance. So you wouldn't confuse one genre for the other. And if you are the kind of person who's looking for middle grade, it needs to speak directly to those genre conventions, is what we call them. So, if you want to be a renegade and you want your book to look different from everything, feel free, but you risk your reader not knowing what genre, what category, what age group. So the best thing to do is really just look at best-selling popular titles in your category, in your market, and see what things are common to all of them. And then you can kind of get an idea of what reader expectations are for your genre. And here's a big one. When you're designing a cover, nowadays especially, it didn't used to be as true, say 20 years ago, but in today's world, you need that title to be big, because most often people are going to be looking at a tiny thumbnail when they're on their phone, shopping on Amazon or on their laptop. When they're looking at just rows of thumbnails in digital format, you want your title to be legible. So you got to make sure it is big, and it needs to be clear and stand out well from the background. I've seen covers where the title color is it's really close to the background and it's small and it's really hard to read. You want to avoid that because of the whole idea of it being a thumbnail size. You need to have it nice and legible. Okay, so what do you put on the cover? This is a big question, and this is something that, you know, when I work with clients, it takes us a few rounds of ideas to get here, but we want to condense your story down to one or two main elements. And generally it can be a character, it can be a symbolic image. In this instance, it's a briefcase because that's the title of the book. And the author had this in her mind. She wanted to have the briefcase on the cover, and it worked out great. It can be a scene, it can be a thematic element. I will say be careful with trying to portray a scene because it can work, and I've done plenty of them, but it can also get bogged down and the author wants to have exactly the appropriate everything on there. And unless you're shooting a movie, sometimes you can't get it perfect, and you don't want to bog down the reader with too much going on. So it's something to think about. And that leads into the next category here, which is keep it simple. I once had an author who wanted everything in the kitchen sink on that cover, and he was adamant about it, and we did it. And we kind of made it look like a movie poster. We kind of put all the characters in a little group, and it's difficult. So you're better off going less is more, keeping white space, keeping open space. It's great to include taglines or series logos and that kind of thing if you need them, but again, you know, keep them clean and open and don't let it clutter the design. And here is kind of an ethereal element that I like to include, which is include a sense of mystery. And I don't mean mystery genre, although that certainly can apply, but I mean, when you see the cover design, you want the reader to stop and say, what is going on with that? What is the story? What is this? And so in this case, I have this beautiful cover that I loved working on with Pat. And she had this concept of having 4 seasons and having a path and a journey through the 4 seasons. And so here we are, we direct the eye in. We have this bizarre combination of things that wouldn't happen. And so you have to wonder what's going on. And it might make you stop and pick it up. And again, directing the eye, because we're leading you into the image, which is an important thing because you're drawing the reader in. And here's some more examples of covers I've considered that would ask the question, you know, why different genres? So we have different conventions here. We've got an actual thriller murder mystery here. We've got romance, and we've got women's fiction. You have to wonder, what is the story? Like, what's happening in these? It draws you in. Why is she upset? What's happening with her? It's enough to make you want to stop and look. And that's always a good thing to include. So if you decide that you want to hire a professional designer, there's a lot that you can find through professional groups such as FAPA. You can look online. Word of mouth is a big one. Ask other authors who's out there doing covers. There's a lot of great designers. So, you know, if you feel confident and you have the experience and the software, go for it. But if you don't, it's something that you do want to let a professional help you with, because as was mentioned before, if you have a really, you know, amateur looking cover, even if you have the most wonderful, well-written book, someone's going to pass it by because they're going to think, well, if this cover is any way to indicate what's inside, then it's probably not as professional inside. So that's one thing to think about. So if you do want to work with a cover designer, check out their portfolio, see what their style is like. I had to do the meetings. If you, there are some really cool cover designers that I've looked at and seen on Facebook and things, and they do there's one I can think of in particular. She does just gorgeous characters. They are so pretty. It's all this like 3D illustrated stuff. It's gorgeous, but they all look the same. Like every single cover she does looks exactly the same, which works if that's what you want. If you have that specific market and you want that kind of character. But if you need something to look like you, make sure that your designer has a versatile portfolio and can handle your genre. And here's something that helps me, which is ask for a writing or hand them a writing sample if they're willing to at least look at maybe your first few pages or maybe your synopsis or your back cover material, because a lot of times I will be struggling with how to connect with a story in order to get the right image. And I'll read pages of their work and I get the tone, I get the voice, I get the vibe from the writing, and that really helps. So that's one way you can help make a successful cover. And don't forget your brand. Your brand is everything. Your brand is what you post on. So your social media, it's your logo, it's your Twitter header graphic. Everything should really be coordinated. It doesn't have to all be matchy, but you should have a strong brand that your reader will say, I know who that is. I recognize that person's work. I know that story, and I know it'll be good because I recognize their brand. And if you want to talk about this with a designer, you can kind of come up with a plan. You can work on a whole suite of things that work together. So now if you have the software and the eye, and you have the motivation to do it, you can certainly do your own cover. And so I'm going to give you some tips on how to do it. Okay, this may be backwards, but start with the nuts and bolts. Figure out who you're going to print with. Is it going to be Ingram? Is it Lulu? Is it Kindle or KDP? Go get a template. Now you may have to wait until you have your final page count, again with the interior formatting. Once all that's finished, you have your trim size, your page count, then you can get a template. You're going to need this. This is going to help you build your cover. You do not want to do it without a template because they are very strict on exactly how things should be set up. And the great thing about any of these sites, so KDP, Ingram, Lulu, they're all going to have really great forums, help back that you can get on and find out, exactly what specs. And there's a lot of times there's great member Q&A forums. You can, if you get stuck, you can get on there and ask questions. So I would start there. Now, where do you get your images? I recommend you get a paid image. You can get free images from places like Unsplash and Pixabay and things like that. And they're great. And I would just recommend that if you do that, read their license, because I think the way they work is every single photographer has their own kind of like setup. So make sure that they allow you to use commercial use as in a book cover for a free image, because a lot of times there may be a stipulation where it's only private or personal use. I recommend just go ahead and buy yourself a good royalty-free stock image or two if you're going to combine them in Photoshop, like I often do. There is just so many cool stock images out there. You'd be surprised. So this is Adobe stock. There's plenty of others. There's iStock Photos, Shutterstock, 123RF. Just Google it, you'll find tons. So you can go back to, again, the question of, what is that one or two thematic elements I want to represent? Is there anything that looks like that? Can I find my character? You'd be surprised. It takes some digging, but you can find it. And fonts. You are not limited to what comes on your computer. There's so many wonderful fonts. Now, don't go crazy. Like I have, 4 fonts here just to kind of have fun. You don't want to do that on your cover, but there are, don't just put Helvetica on there, although that could be gorgeous. I mean, simple fonts are great. You could totally do that. But if you have a Western, why not get a fun Western looking font? As long as it's clear, legible, easy to read, especially at small thumbnail size. There are wonderful places to go and look for just amazing fonts, and you can get them for like $10, $15 on up. Shop around. This is Creative Market, which I use a lot because these are a lot of times designed by individuals that post them and sell them for not much money, and they're great professional fonts. So software, I only work with Adobe because that is pretty much industry standard for designers. I use Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, PDF, Adobe PDF, I can't think what they call it now. But there are other great alternatives. Corel Draw is a good one, and it's much less expensive. I used that way a long time ago in school, and it's a good suite. So that's an alternative. Microsoft Publisher, again, you don't want to mess with Word. Just don't even try. But Publisher, I think, should be able to handle something like this. I'm actually not sure what else is out there in terms of competitors, but I know people are talking about using online software services like Canva. And I've heard that you can do a really great ebook cover for your ebook on Canva. So, that would definitely work in terms of formatting a print quality CMYK full cover wrap. I do not know if it would handle it. I kind of doubt it. I think you're probably better off using Publisher or Photoshop or InDesign. You want to look at the specs from your printer. Make sure you know exactly what they need on the final product to make sure your software can deliver exactly that format. So let's see here. Spines and back covers. This is a big one. When you're doing print on demand, you can line up your image exactly perfect to the template, and it could come back printed at 1/4 of an inch off. It happens. It's unfortunate, but there's just a lot of wiggle room on the press. So what you want to do is make sure that your background is seamless from the front to the spine, because if it ends up shifting, you don't want to see your hard line off. So that's one thing to think about. Now, once you've got your cover, you've got a great book. Well, you're not limited. You can do more with it. The first and easy thing to do is social media promos. You can just use your cover art with a great quote from the book. You can do a lot of mileage with that. But there are these really cool things out there called cover mock-ups. This is one from Creative Market again. You can find really professional photos of people holding blank books in all kinds of scenarios that you can put your cover on with Photoshop. And it's just a nice thing if you want to have images of your book in a social media feed that look professional, look interesting and eye-catching. This is a great way to do it. And then this is a new thing that I'm just starting to get into with clients, but I did not design these, it's just something I grabbed off Cafe Press here. But once you have your artwork, you can do lots of things with it. You can make t-shirts, you can make posters, you can make bookmarks, get it printed on a mug, get it printed on anything you want. There's, if you haven't checked out Printify or Printful, they are so much fun. You guys will get lost in that. It's just so cool. So they could be promos for your Patreon account. They could be things sitting on your desk at your book signing, whatever you want. Something to think about. You can get more mileage out of your artwork. And that was it. I don't know how I'm doing on time. Am I like way?
No, you're doing great. That was perfect.
Okay. Well, that was it for me. So I guess we'll maybe Ginger would have a time to finish. I'm looking forward to questions.
The TV's not on.
Okay, I need to stop sharing my screen. Okay, here we go.
There we go.
Hey.
That was awesome, Elizabeth. Did we get Ginger back?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I went ahead and said I thought you were probably wrapping up anyway, and figured you would be ready for questions. But if you had any point that you wanted to make before we start the questions.
Yeah, I do want to cover a couple more points that are rather important. Besides the rivers, there are such certain things called orphans, widows, and runts. Watch out for those. A runt is a single word at the bottom of a paragraph all by itself. It's only like 7 or less characters long. That's a runt. You don't want to have those. Orphans are those, orphans and widows are the sentences that are at one line that belongs to an entire paragraph that sits alone either at the bottom or the top. So those you want to watch out for. Best practice, according to the book formatters guideline, which is the Chicago Manual of Style, they say do not use the word chapter at the beginning of your book when you're doing a book that has chapter and a title. remove the word chapter. You can put the number, and it doesn't matter if you spell it out or use a physical Roman number, but be sure to not to use the word chapter if you have a title to your chapter. Make sure you leave thumb room on the outside margin. And that means so that people can hold the book without covering up your text. Don't take your text all the way out to the edge. And do not put two spaces between sentences. Used to be in typing school that we were told we had to put two spaces between every sentence. And books in the old days, you had to do two spaces because that's the way they typeset. Nowadays, we can do it digitally and they've removed that requirement. So remove any extra spaces between sentences, just one. And if you're using a drop cap, don't use and you have a paragraph, your first paragraph starts with a quote mark, do not, according to Chicago, do not use the quote mark. You drop the quote mark and just capitalize or drop cap the first letter. And then the other one was use either indents or spacing between paragraphs. Don't use both. Don't indent your paragraph and then add space at the bottom. So those are the main things that I wanted to touch on to share with you all. Your folio, which is your page number, can go at the top or the bottom, wherever you prefer. But that's what it's called. It's not called a page number, it's called a folio, just so you know. And I think that's pretty much the important pieces that everybody would need to know.
Okay, yay. And we're glad you were able to make it back on, Ginger. We were talking about how fantastic technology is when it's, fantastic.
Yes.
Okay, so I appreciate both of you guys coming to talk to us. I will say, just on a personal note, I used to own a bookstore, as some of you might know, and I can tell you that your cover will sell your book. If people can see the cover, that is definitely that's your first step, right? And for me, and some people maybe aren't as crazy about it as I am, but as a reader, when the inside is wonky, I have so many books. I'll set it down, and I don't have time for wonky. So both of those elements are really important. And we're going to open up to questions. And while you guys are thinking of your questions, I have one that's, hey, I'm the one talking, so I get first picks. My question was actually to both of you. You were both very gracious in talking about how hard it is to do the jobs that you do, and to tell us that we could do them by ourselves. And I certainly appreciate that. I think often that is a super bad idea. And I think we all kind of know that. I think what sometimes people think that it's going to be super expensive and probably maybe not worth it for them to invest in having someone, a professional, take care of those elements. So Ginger and Elizabeth both, what, just in a broad sense, what is like the price range that one would pay to have someone format a novel by a professional? And also, Elizabeth, to you, what are the ranges for a cover design that you, and I know genres are different and length and all of that is different, but Ginger, how much ballpark is formatting run for a novel?
It's easy to figure out. Find out what size your page is, take it into Word and make a page that's that big, put all your document in there. Then you'll have a base page count, and multiply that by $1.25, and you've got the cost of the interior. So
it's $1.25 a page, roughly.
$1.25 a page. And
Okay.
I've heard that other people formatters can charge up to $3 a page or more, but I just only charge $1.25.
I think that's maybe less expensive than some people would think that it was to have a professional put the inside of your book together. So Elizabeth, for a cover, and again, I understand, you know, different genres and different complications and whatnot, but what are some of the ranges for a good cover design?
Well, for me, I'm in the pretty average zone, which is between 300 to 500. And the lower end is when you have one or two photos and you don't have a lot of heavy Photoshop time. And the higher end is a lot of heavy Photoshop time. So we're talking hours and hours of painting and illustrating and that kind of thing. So that adds on to the price. If I have an author who's already has a photo or has taken a photo, there's a steep discount for that because we cut out all the time involved in finding that image. So we can do that. There's, you know, shop around. I know there's a lot of people out there that are doing, nowadays the new thing is template, or gosh, no.
Pre-made.
Yeah. And they can be good. Like, it just depends on who it is. And if there's anything, you know, you want it to look unique, but that's a good option if you're really trying to keep the price down, because half the work is done. You just have to kind of customize it. I'm thinking I might get into that. I don't know. I thought about it, but on my free time. But
yeah.
So I will work with the client to get, you know, what they need. Well, we can adjust the hours and things if they have a certain need for it, but it's generally that range.
It truly is where if you use a template, your chances of seeing your cover with different words somewhere else, somebody else uses, is quite high. So it's really best to you look for a unique photo and maybe merge too, like she says. And
okay,
if you don't have permission, don't use it. Don't go to Google and find it and just use it.
Yes.
One of the things that I've told people when they use a lot of the free covers is to do a reverse Google image search and see how many books pop up with that cover, with that image on it. And it will make you like, I know as a cover designer myself, I've gotten work from people from that, just going, this is you. Yeah. Look at these 19 other people who have that image as their cover. Right. We do have some questions. Pat, are you seeing questions? I know that Tara just asked one. Pat?
Yes.
I know that Tara just asked a question because I saw it pop up, but I didn't catch it. What was Tara's question?
I think one of the things she was making a comment, the challenge with free images is that they're used a lot by designers. So you run the risk of your central image being used on other covers by different authors. Right. And I get that. But I can see an Amazon image a mile away. For sure.
I agree.
All right, Nancy has a question. How do you respond to people who want to use Fiverr? There's a good question. Fiverr as their cover, Elizabeth.
Okay, you're gonna love this because I have not even heard of Fiverr.
Oh my. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it
depends
Fiverr is a platform where a lot of artists and whatnot offer work, and there's a lot of really good work on there, but a lot of it tends to be outside. Yes, there you go. That was the word I was looking for, Tara. Thank you. It's a gig platform. So artists can go ahead and offer services, and they tend to be a little bit cheaper sometimes because they're from all over the globe, and maybe they're from countries where income is a little bit less, and sometimes you get a good deal, and sometimes you just get what you pay for. So that's pretty much Fiverr. I think that with all of the advice that Elizabeth has given us today, that if you are looking on Fiverr, you would at least know some better questions to ask, and figure out whether or not that's, I feel like the prices that Elizabeth quoted are crazy affordable. So going with somebody that you knew and that you knew their work quality and everything would definitely be what I would suggest. Tara, I see your little virtual hand.
Yes, since my question got skipped, what it was I'm curious, Elizabeth, do you offer multiple comps when you're doing design for an author before you settle on a final one?
Yes, definitely. That's part of the process. We will have usually a phone call conference first to kind of brainstorm and shoot ideas back and forth. And then we go through several steps. The first step is kind of gathering photos that might be elements we can work with and having the author's feedback the whole way and see what they like. And once we've kind of gathered photos that are, possible ones to use, then I'll create several different mock-ups, and then we can kind of keep narrowing it down. So you're going to see a lot of different rounds before we get to the final.
Pat, thank you for that. Pat, I see your little virtual hand up.
Yes.
Or is it a high five?
Actually, Tara,
She was just imitating
I
me.
was just going back to go to kind of sort of from, the front end. So from Richard, we have, we all use Word. We're not supposed to use Pages now, are we? And I think this is to Ginger. I do or have done by my editor everything on Kindle. And remember, this whole editing, publishing business is supposed to be easy, but things are getting more difficult. You want to handle that, Ginger?
I'm not sure what the question is.
We're not supposed to use Pages now, are we?
Oh, Pages? Yeah,
You're talking about using Word.
I don't use either platform, but I think if you're going to use anything, Word is just as bad as any of the others. You can't control the spacing with it, but you can get away with it with a Kindle ebook. I wouldn't use it for print.
Oh, I raised my
Pages
hand.
or Word. Yeah.
I raised my own hand, so I'm going to call on me next.
Okay, call on.
Ginger, a formatting question about children's books.
Yes, ma'am.
For an illustrated like picture book, what tips can you give for an ebook version of a picture book?
Well, there are a couple of pieces of advice for a children's picture book. You can do it as what's called a fixed layout, where if you have the text on the image, or you could do it where you put your image in there and then the text. If you use a fixed layout, which is quite popular and very much more expensive way to go when formatting a Kindle children's book, because it takes special software to create it, you're better off just using, if you're going to do it yourself, use Word, put the picture in Word, and then put the words underneath the picture rather than trying to get the picture with the words on it. It's not going to look as pretty. It's not going to look anywhere near as good. Yeah, it's ugly to do that, but it works with Kindle, with ebooks. And also, you want to be sure that your readers can read it. Fewer people have the Kindle readers or have the readers that allow for fixed layout. So you'll sell more of the ugly picture with the words under it than you will with the beautiful fixed layouts. I don't prefer them, but that's if you're going to do it yourself, that's a lot. It's almost impossible for someone like layperson, to go ahead and do those fixed layouts.
Okay, Pat, you're
okay. I'm going through some of the chats for you here. I know you got a lot going on. Richard Bonte again. I think the problem with all this is that we're writers. Some of us have advanced degrees and all, but We're often not visual artists, publishers, and frankly, I have a lot of trouble just understanding the language of printing and publishing. My point being, I use Kindle Direct Printing or Lulu to do this stuff for me. Everything is not DIY.
I would agree with that 100%, which is why it's good to know people like Elizabeth and Ginger are out there who can do that sort of work for you on maybe a more personal basis than some of those platforms like Lulu and whatnot. Okay, Pat?
And from Nancy Hellickson, how do you respond to people who want to use Fiverr for the cover?
Yep, we did that one.
Oh, we did. Okay, I'm so sorry.
Yep. That's okay.
I'm trying to cover all this here.
I know.
Yep. Okay.
Does anybody else have a question while Pat's looking?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The one comment I have is when you're writing your book, and this, I know it hasn't got to do with formatting, but kind of it does. If every sentence you write ends in a exclamation mark, that means nothing's important. So be careful with the amounts of exclamation marks that you use, and try not to use what we call echoes, which are words, the same word or a derivative word too close to itself.
It's also the same with italics. You don't want to use too many italics all in one place.
Right.
You don't want to use too much of anything over and over again. But I was just going to say to Ginger, some of us are always like this. Everything we do has an exclamation point.
That's you.
We're always excited.
So I have another comment that I'd throw in as well when it comes to the structure of a book. Because Ginger mentioned the acknowledgments and how they can sometimes be at the beginning, sometimes at the end. Personally, I recommend having the acknowledgments in the back matter rather than the front matter, because when you upload a book, for instance, to Amazon or other sites that allow a look inside feature, you're not going to sell somebody on your book by reading their acknowledgments. It's just, they don't care who the acknowledgments are to until they've been invested in the material. So the look inside feature typically is showing the first 10 to 15% of the book or a sampling of it. And you want it to be actual content that they can make a buying decision on. So if you put your acknowledgments at the end, then more likely they're going to see the meat of your book at the beginning in the look inside feature.
Right.
Great. That's a very good point.
Especially with Kindles, with digital books, you want to do that, put them at the end. Anything that's not content related in a digital book, put at the end. All those praiseworthy, your book is so wonderful, always at the end. Because that's not the meat and that's not what sells. But in the print book is different. You can put them in the front. You can put them in the front. And Chicago Manual is the style book that you want to use, and they recommend the front or the back, whichever is your preference.
I know they recommend them, but in print, when you upload it, if you go to Amazon, you can look at the inside of both print and ebooks. And so that look inside feature, you don't want them to be reading the acknowledgments. That's not going to sell the book.
No,
so even
not.
though Chicago Manual of Style allows you to do either, I recommend them being at the end because it does make a difference.
Agreed. I agree.
Yeah, I agree too, especially in the digitals.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
Can I respond to Richard's question to me, which is why not put the table of contents at the end too? The reason is some people will make a buying decision based on the table of contents, especially if it comes to nonfiction. They're going to look at that to see, what did you include in this book? What are the major points that you're going to be making? And so the table of contents can be a part of that buying decision. It won't necessarily be for fiction, but oftentimes for fiction books, you don't have a table of contents unless you have really engaging chapter titles.
Right. Did that answer your question, Richard? Yeah. Okay, good. I think that this is a lot of information, and I think as authors and also as readers, we sometimes don't remember to pay attention to that. Some of the points that Tara just made need you to not only be a reader and an author, but also a marketer, and understand how the layout of your book can affect buyers' choices. And I think Elizabeth was very clear on how your cover definitely will affect buyers' choices. Again, just from my personal experience, when I owned the bookstore, and all of the books in my store were front facing, so everybody being able to see the cover right away. They do judge. Everybody judges books by their cover. Being able to see the cover, a whole wall of covers, they would go immediately to the book that they were drawn to, pick it up, turn it over. Then they're reading the blurb. And if the back of the book looks as good as the front of the book and the blurb is engaging, then they will open up the book. And once they open up the book, as long as the inside just briefly looks good, your first paragraph is good, they will buy your book. Any one of those things is going to keep people from buying the book. So I think you guys were both gave us a lot of information, which was great, and I hope everybody took notes. Ginger and Elizabeth, if there's anything that you want to share with the people who are here tonight and the people who weren't, any sort of a download or any sort of, I know, Ginger, you had touched on the list of the layout of the interior. We can get that to everybody. Ginger, you've got a website. What's your website?
www.document,
Okay. And Elizabeth, you have a website that we can go and look at your stuff, your studio?
Yes, it's babskicreativestudios.com, and that's B as in boy, A as in apple, B as in boy, SKI, like ski down the mountain. So babskicreativestudios.com.
And once you get there, look for the koi.
Yeah.
Just again, as a reminder, and thank you, by the way, for a couple of you sharing the dog show. Mine's been banished because he would have knocked the thing off, and Pat and I have unrelated, but remarkably the same dog.
Yes, we do.
So in closing, a reminder again that the conference is the last weekend in July. Registration is still open. There will be, we will also at that time, besides having the workshops, that we'll have more experts come and talk about their fields. Chris Gibson, you can see over there, Mr. YouTube, is one of our conference workshop speakers, and he'll be talking about social media and that sort of thing. How to maneuver through all of that. And if you got a chance to hear him speak a couple of years ago at conference, he is a very engaging speaker. We got a lot of good reviews, Chris, on that. So that is, you guys can go. Oh, also we'll have the book awards ceremony will be there, and you'll get to see a lot of the good covers. Maybe one or two that Elizabeth actually did. How to register, you go to myfapa.org. If you're already a member, you know how to get there. Also, if you are a member, make sure that you are logged in when you go to myfapa.org and register for the conference, because members do get a slight discount on the conference. So there is that. I just got a secret message. I don't know that we can share yet, so I'm not going to, but we have a really great speaker coming in next month. And Pat will get that information out to everybody. It will be on the FAPA member forum and in the next newsletter. So you want to make sure. Pat, I either have 5 things that I forgot to say, or she's got her virtual and her real hand raised. Take it away, Pat.
So I don't know if your secret message came from the same person that my secret message came from.
Yes, it did.
But
Yes, it did.
We will have Jane Wood just now
Jane?
actually texted me and said that she will be our speaker next month on July. And her topic is niche marketing to schools and other places like that. But niche marketing. So if you have kind of a niche-y book, you might want to tune into that one.
Is niche a word, Pat?
I don't know. I just made it up. I like it.
I think the proper term is
I like it.
niche-esque.
I kind of like it.
I like it.
Angela Bowl will be talking to us in September.
Nice.
So on conference and networking.
If you all do not know who Angela Bowl is, she is the director, is that the right term? She's the director of the IBPA, which is a fantastic organization. If you are not a member there, you should look into it. They are an affiliate. We are an affiliate group of theirs, and they are doing wonderful things on an even grander scale than we are, just because they're a across the country organization. And both of those are that's really good news. And don't think that just because Jane writes middle grade books and children's books, from what I hear, that it will be about that. And if you don't write children's books, it doesn't have anything to do with you. That is not true. Any sort of, niche book, niche-esque book. And quite frankly, I think if your book isn't niche, you can probably figure out a way to make it such that that the information that Jane has to share next month will be good for you. On that note, I have nothing else to say. You will get instructions on how to register for the next practical tips from Pat, because she's on top of that sort of thing.
Actually, if you're on this call tonight, then all you have to do is tell me to sign you up for the next one. That's all you have to do.
There you go. So that's certainly very simple. Don't forget to register for the conference. And for anybody who entered a book that is a finalist, congratulations. That's awesome and amazing. And I look forward to celebrating your success at the conference. And we will see you there. I'm going to go watch hockey. So you guys carry on with your lives. We are good. And I hope to see you guys all next month. And go Canes.
Boston's ahead 1-0.
I don't know. The Canes are playing Florida, the Lightning.
Yep.
Different
All
game. Okay.
All right.
Don't tell me the score.
Bye,
Don't tell me the
everyone.
score. I gotta go. I hope we're winning. Bye,
Thank you.
guys. I'll see you guys next month.
Okay.
Bye. Elizabeth,
Thank you all.
when
Yes, ma'am.
afterwards, can you stay? I need to talk to you.
Sure.
Okay.
Pat, if you want to
Yeah.
redo the introduction.